Did you know that one man started with nothing but a few borrowed dollars and is now called the Superman of Asia? His fortune, over $30 billion. And here's the twist, he didn't make his billions in tech, oil, or finance. He built it in real estate. Li Ka Shing's story is unlike anything you've heard before. From selling plastic flowers door to door to owning some of the most valuable land and properties in the world, his path was anything but predictable. Along the way, he faced risks that could have destroyed him and made decisions that others thought were reckless. How did he turn those risks into an empire that reshaped entire skylines? And what's the one move that changed everything for him? What you're about to hear isn't just a story of wealth. It's a blueprint for recognizing opportunity when no one else does. But to understand how he became one of the richest men alive, you have to start where his journey began. A young man with no safety net, no connections, and one chance to change everything. In the heart of Hong Kong's chaos and opportunity lies one of the most fascinating stories in modern business. Li Ka Shing, the man who would go on to be called the Superman of Asia, wasn't handed a fortune. In fact, his beginnings were far from glamorous. At the time, Hong Kong was a city filled with contrasts, sky-high ambition, but grounded in struggles. Refugees from war-torn China flooded the streets, and resources were scarce. Li Ka Shing was one of those refugees. He arrived with his family after fleeing the horrors of the Sino-Japanese War. At just 15 years old, Li found himself shouldering an enormous responsibility, providing for his family after his father's untimely death. Life didn't wait for him to figure things out. He worked long hours in a factory making plastic watch bands, earning barely enough to get by. But while others focused on survival, Li quietly observed everything around him: how businesses operated, how supply chains moved, and how small opportunities could lead to big results if handled correctly. He wasn't just working to survive, he was learning, absorbing, and planning. Every shift, every deal, every interaction shaped his understanding of business. By the time Li was in his early 20s, the lessons he'd learned and the determination he'd cultivated would set him apart. He didn't wait for opportunity to knock. He built the door himself. What followed next was nothing short of extraordinary. Li Ka Shing's rise wasn't just about money. It was about timing, vision, and an unshakable belief in his ability to turn even the smallest idea into a world-changing empire. But before we get to the skyscrapers and billion-dollar deals, let's rewind to where it all started. Li Ka Shing's early life was shaped by hardship. Born in 1928 in Chaozhou, China, he grew up in a family that valued education and hard work. His father was a school principal, but life took a devastating turn when the Sino-Japanese War forced the family to flee to Hong Kong. The city wasn't the glitzy metropolis we know today. For refugees like Li, survival was a daily challenge. At just 15 years old, tragedy struck again. His father passed away from tuberculosis. With no time to grieve, Li became the sole provider for his family. While other teenagers were attending school, Li was walking into a factory for 16-hour shifts, earning pennies. The factory produced plastic watch bands, but for Li, it was more than just a job. He paid close attention to every detail: the production process, the way deals were negotiated, and how successful businesses found ways to grow. He also developed a reputation for being incredibly reliable and hardworking, traits that would serve him well later in life. Despite the grueling work, Li's focus never wavered. Every paycheck wasn't just survival, it was savings. And every interaction wasn't just a task, it was a lesson. At night, while others rested, Li read about business and economics, determined to give his family a better life. His first opportunity came when his uncle, seeing his determination, offered him a chance to manage a small shop. Li declined, not because he didn't value the offer, but because he had a bigger dream. He knew that to truly succeed, he needed to build something of his own. By his early 20s, Li had managed to save enough money to take his first real shot at business. What he lacked in capital, he made up for with an unmatched work ethic and sharp instincts. The next step would change everything. With his first savings in hand and the confidence he'd built through years of relentless effort, Li Ka Shing set out to create a company of his own. But it wasn't just any business. He had spotted a market that no one else was paying attention to. By 1950, Li Ka Shing was ready to make his move. With the savings he had painstakingly accumulated and a small loan from family, he rented a tiny workspace and founded his first business, Cheung Industries. His focus? Plastic manufacturing. But Li wasn't just making generic products. He was about to identify a golden opportunity that no one else saw coming. During this period, plastic was gaining global popularity, and one product in particular caught Li's attention: artificial flowers. While they were seen as cheap novelties by some, Li recognized their potential to transform the home decor market. He believed that by improving quality and offering them at competitive prices, he could capture a massive untapped market. Li went all in. He designed better molds, sourced high-quality raw materials, and streamlined the production process to cut costs. It wasn't long before Cheung Industries became one of the first companies in Asia to produce plastic flowers that could rival those from Europe and America. But his success didn't come without challenges. The competition was fierce, and Li knew that to scale his business, he needed to win over large international buyers. In one bold move, he traveled overseas to pitch directly to distributors, despite not speaking fluent English. His persistence paid off. By the mid-1950s, Cheung was exporting products worldwide, earning Li a reputation as a sharp and fearless businessman. The profits from the plastic flower business poured in, but Li wasn't content with short-term gains. He saw the writing on the wall. Plastic flowers might be profitable now, but the market was bound to saturate. He needed to diversify, and his instincts pointed him towards something far more stable and lucrative: real estate. In the late 1950s, Hong Kong's property market was in turmoil. Prices were plummeting, and many viewed land and buildings as risky investments. But Li thought differently. He saw a city growing rapidly, with a rising demand for housing, offices, and industrial spaces. Instead of shying away, he began reinvesting his profits from Cheung into property. This was no small decision. At a time when most people would double down on their existing business, Li was pivoting into an entirely new and uncertain field. Yet, his disciplined approach to saving and reinvesting gave him the financial flexibility to take calculated risks. By the early 1960s, Li Ka Shing wasn't just a successful manufacturer. He was laying the foundation for what would become one of the largest real estate empires in the world. Cheung had evolved into a dual powerhouse, driving profits from both manufacturing and property. What came next would solidify Li's legacy, not just as a businessman, but as a visionary who saw opportunities others missed. The 1960s marked a turning point for Li Ka Shing. While others saw chaos in Hong Kong's volatile real estate market, Li saw opportunity. Property prices had hit rock bottom due to political instability, and many investors were pulling out. But Li, with his keen sense for timing, began buying land and buildings at bargain prices. His strategy was simple yet brilliant: focus on undervalued assets in areas with high growth potential. Li's first major acquisition was a rundown piece of industrial land that most had written off as a bad investment. He redeveloped it into a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility, which not only boosted the value of the property, but also generated steady income. But Li didn't stop at industrial spaces. He turned his attention to residential and commercial properties, understanding that Hong Kong's booming population would need places to live and work. By the 1970s, Cheung Holdings had transformed into a full-fledged real estate development company, building everything from affordable housing to luxury skyscrapers. Li's approach wasn't just about buying low and selling high. It was about creating value. He believed in maximizing every square foot of land, designing projects that catered to the specific needs of their target markets. This combination of foresight and meticulous planning made Cheung a household name in Hong Kong's property market. One of his most defining moves came in 1979, when he made the bold decision to acquire Hutchison Whampoa, a struggling conglomerate with significant real estate holdings. It was a high-stakes deal that many thought was too risky. But for Li, it was the perfect opportunity to expand his empire globally. Hutchison's assets included prime properties in Europe and Asia, giving Li a foothold in international markets. By the 1980s, Li Ka Shing wasn't just one of the biggest players in Hong Kong. He was shaping skylines worldwide. His projects included shopping malls, ports, hotels, and residential complexes that became landmarks in their own right. Today, Li's real estate empire is valued in the tens of billions, but his influence goes beyond numbers. His developments have shaped entire cities, created jobs, and provided homes for millions. But what made Li truly exceptional wasn't just his investments, it was his mindset. Behind every decision Li Ka Shing made was a disciplined mindset and a set of habits that guided him through challenges and uncertainty. Understanding those principles gives us a glimpse into what set him apart and how they could inspire anyone looking to achieve their own success. Even as a billionaire, he famously woke up before dawn every day, dedicating the early hours to reading and planning. For Li, knowledge wasn't just power, it was a competitive edge. One of his core principles was frugality. Despite his immense wealth, Li was known for living simply. He wore modest clothing, drove affordable cars for much of his life, and often reused items others would discard. This wasn't because he feared spending money, it was because he understood the value of reinvesting in growth rather than indulging in fleeting luxuries. Another habit that defined him was his focus on relationships. Li believed that trust was the cornerstone of business. Whether it was partners, employees, or even rivals, he treated everyone with respect and fairness. This earned him not only allies, but also a reputation for integrity, which opened doors that money alone couldn't buy. Li also had an uncanny ability to remain calm under pressure. During volatile markets or political turmoil, when others panicked, Li stayed patient. He once said, "I don't focus on temporary problems, I look at the long-term potential." This mindset allowed him to see opportunities where others saw only risks. Philanthropy was another cornerstone of his character. Despite his relentless drive for success, Li believed in giving back. Through the Li Ka Shing Foundation, he donated billions to education, healthcare, and disaster relief, emphasizing that wealth should be used to improve lives, not just accumulate. What's remarkable about Li is that his habits weren't complex. They were simple, consistent, and rooted in discipline. He believed that success came from doing the basics well, every single day. But even with his disciplined approach and immense success, Li Ka Shing wasn't immune to challenges. Over the years, his business empire faced criticism and scrutiny, forcing him to navigate some of the toughest moments of his career while protecting his legacy. From a factory worker earning pennies to one of the richest and most respected figures in the world, his journey proves that the right mindset, discipline, and vision can turn even the most impossible dreams into reality. But here's the question: what are you doing with your time today? Are you building the habits and skills that could set you apart? Or are you waiting for the perfect moment that might never come? If Li's story has inspired you to think bigger, why not start investing in yourself right now? In the description, you'll find a link to some of Li Ka Shing's favorite books and strategies that helped him grow his empire, resources that might spark the ideas you need to take your next step. And before you go, there's another story you won't want to miss. Check out the startup no one believed in that's now worth billions. It's a perfect follow-up to this video, showing how underdogs with big ideas can rewrite the rules of success. The next Li Ka Shing could be watching this right now. Why not make today the day you take the first step toward your own legacy?